So we've been talking about different ways, different solutions. Well, the first and most natural one is to follow nature. What's one of the first things nature makes? It's hydrogen peroxide. If we look in the human body, I'll show you how prevalent this is. In the human body, most of the cells in your body produce hydrogen peroxide as part and parcel of your immune system. You have a little cell called the peroxisome, and its job is to make peroxide. It's your immune system at work. That's why all these people that are telling you oxygen is this horrible free radical are crazy. Well, maybe they're just uninformed. But the whole point is, your body makes peroxide. There are 4 enzymes in your body to break it down and release the oxygen. So your body uses it all the time. Peroxide in natural form comes from the rainwater, gets into the groundwater, it's taken up by the roots of the plants. Plants produce the fruit, the animals come along, eat the fruit. We eat the animals. That's part of the cycle of oxygen on the planet, the oxygen food chain, so to speak. We need to make sure that every time we eat, the food, the animals, the vegetables, whatever it is, has all been fully oxygenated during its growing process so that there is oxygen left in it so that when we go to drink it, we get it or eat it. Historical usage, peroxide's been used orally, it's been injected into people. People bathe in it. I was just bathing in it yesterday. I was taking a bath in some hydrogen peroxide diluted in a bathtub full of water. Colonic therapists call me up and tell me that they're using it in their colonics. Why? Because it's a powerful oxidizer. It releases H2O2, releases H2O water, and leaves the O1. The O1 attacks everything that doesn't belong in your body. It attacks the bacteria, the viruses, the fungus, the pathogens. It attacks the toxins. But because it's got the hydrogen in there, you have to be very careful with the percentage you use. Nobody uses strong concentrations of this medically at all. Nobody. But there's been a lot of good results coming from people using it in very low concentrations. I've seen amazing things, even in my own life. Third world countries, for example. The ABBA Light Health Project in Nairobi, Kenya. They got all these AIDS patients in there, slum dwellers in Kenya. And this nun, Didi Ananda Rakuri, she wrote to me and said, Ed, what can we do? We got all these people, they're poor, they're living on soda pop and white bread, and they've got AIDS. I said, well, great, how do you help somebody? What I said is, well, can you get peroxide somewhere? And so they were able to get a 6% food grade peroxide. And I said, well, try having some of these people, some of these slum dwellers, have them start on a regimen of coming in to see you every day, and you give them a little bit of peroxide, just a little bit, not enough to burn or cause any problem. And they take that orally. And literally, she's written back to me and said, in the past 8 months, we have introduced H2O2 to over 50 HIV patients. This is 2 years ago. The results have been mixed, but overall have been very excellent. Some patients have literally been dragged back from the brink of death from the use of this hydrogen peroxide oral preparations at a low dosage over a continued length of time. Literally been dragged back from the brink of death, dying of AIDS in Africa. At least 30 of the patients report a remission of many of their problems. In all cases, patients have expressed an increase in stamina and overall well-being. The peroxide has had a tremendous impact on the health of our patients. And I said, wait till they take it for a year. Why'd you say the results have been mixed? Because they all have to live on soda pop and white bread, which is definitely not enough antioxidants or nutrition or clean water in the diet. You can't be eating only overly processed white flour bread and white sugar carbonated drinks and expect your healing to continue. You must address your diet. There's lots of uses for peroxide. It's tough to store because it's so volatile. And there's a lot of things that are better than peroxide, I think, for the safety factors and the ease of use, that sort of thing, for humans. But as far as just these basic uses, this is excellent for cleaning up the bathroom, the dishwasher, humidifiers, kitchen, laundry. Put peroxide, wash your food in peroxide, it kills the pesticides and gets rid of all the bugs on it. You can sprout seeds with it, vegetables, garden spray, insecticide spray. Insects don't like it at all. The plants, they grow like crazy. You take like a tomato plant, get 2 tomato plants, put peroxide in the soil and on the leaves in a very low concentration on one of the plants, and the other one have it apart from it so they don't cross-contaminate. And you'll watch at the end of or when it comes time to do the picking of the tomatoes, the one you put the oxygen and peroxide in, have huge tomatoes, multiple tomatoes all over, very strong, healthy plant. The other one will just be kind of, average. We've seen it over and over and over. Life runs on oxygen. The way plants get their oxygen, their food, is by having bacteria cling to their roots. That's why if you pull up a plant and you move it somewhere, you have to take the dirt with you, because it's the bacteria living on the plant root that is the digestive system of the plant. So you must have this digestive system which dissolves the minerals, the dirt, feeds the plant with the dirt, and then gives it oxygen. So what would happen if these aerobic bacteria, and that's what they are, they love oxygen because they're outside, they love oxygen, these aerobic bacteria were to be given oxygen supplements. If you were to supplement your crops, your plants, your livestock with oxygen in the form of low-grade food-grade peroxide, low-concentration food-grade peroxide. Well, they grow like crazy. And I've interviewed people that have commercial growing operations, seed plants, warehouses just filled with seedlings they ship all over the world. They've gotten rid of all their barnyard diseases. The county extension agent can't believe it. They bring their livestock that they're feeding the peroxide to. They bring the livestock down to the slaughterhouse, and the inspector goes, well, wait a minute, I've never seen a liver that clean. I've never seen pink tissue in years. Something must be going on here. And so they had to educate the inspector that, no, these are healthy plants, and these are healthy animals, and that's the difference. There are people that go out and buy diseased animals where they've got those clips in the ear where they feed them the medication, they're being injected and injected. Well, finally their immune systems just wear out. The animal just wears out. Well, there are people that go out and buy them for a song, feed the animal hydrogen peroxide in its water, and a year later get top dollar selling the animal on the market. Perfectly healthy animal. Crops, like I said, you can increase your crop yield, get rid of your diseases. The soils are all played out. The soils have been so over-farmed, none of our food has what it's supposed to have in it in the way of minerals. There's all kinds of products out there. There's stabilized oxygen. There's a product called Dynamo, for example. There's the oxygen multi-supplements. This would be things like Oxymune, Oxygen Elements Plus, about 5 different supplements all in one, creates oxygen catalytically in the human body. MSM, it's the third most abundant element in nature. And what it does is it allows the cell walls to become permeable so they can absorb more oxygen. So you can say MSM is an oxygenator because it allows the body to absorb more oxygen and let out more waste, because it makes the cell walls, helps them maintain their flexibility. Otherwise they'll get leathery from a lack of sulfur. And this started happening when they broke the sulfur cycle. They stopped putting the manure on the fields, the animal manure on the fields. They switched to chemicals from the factory, and they don't have enough sulfur on the plants anymore. So that means everybody listening to this is sulfur deficient. And that means your cells on the inside, probably from a lack of MSM, are becoming more and more leathery as time goes on. If you want to get that flexibility back in you, you should investigate this. It's a major contributing factor in disease. Ozone. Ozone is the king. Ozone is the best of the best of the best. And what do I mean by that? Is I have seen more people healed more rapidly of more things than you can imagine through the use of ozone supplementation or clinical application of it. Some doctor's office somewhere, either in this country or outside of it. It's the best of the best. What is ozone? Ozone is simply O3. Pure medical grade O1 plus another one gives you O3. Much more active, much more powerful than plain old stable O2. The plain old stable O2 is not what we're talking about when we speak about oxygen therapies. It's one of the many oxygen therapies, but it's not the main thrust of where we're going with this stuff. Well, what about the ozone up in the air? What about the smog, Ed? You know, ozone smog, right? No. How can something measured in parts per million be a major component of anything? How can something that's pure oxygen, O1 plus O1 plus O1, O2 plus O1, O3, how can pure oxygen be smog? Somebody's lying to you. Every night in the newspaper, every night on the news, they're talking about the ozone level was this and that. and the pollution, blah, blah, blah. None of it makes any sense. None of it is scientifically sound. They're trying to make up excuses to find a way to blame nature. So you don't go, wait a minute, here's this newscaster telling me that something's measured in parts per million. I'm supposed to worry about that. Yet I go outside and the air is orange or green or black or brown or gray. Tons of hydrocarbon emissions, tons of hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, and sulfur polluting the air I'm supposed to be breathing. But they're going to blame that ozone. Ozone is there because nature is trying to clean up the problem. Nature is trying to do you the favor of cleaning up your breathing air. How do we know this is true? Well, we can take an home ozone air purifier, get a little closet made of glass, fill it with smoke, put the ozone air purifier in there, and in a few minutes, all the smoke is gone. Poof, gone. That's nature cleaning up smog. But if you came by with some kind of an instrument to measure the ozone, you go, oh my God, look at all the ozone, that terrible pollutant. No, that's nature cleaning up the pollution. People do phony studies because they start out with these mindsets. Okay, you go to work for, let's say, some government agency, and the boss says, that terrible ozone. And you go, oh, okay. And you heard in school that terrible ozone. And so then you go out and you start doing papers on it. And so there's this mass and volume of non-evidence that passes for evidence that really needs to be addressed. We need to get that whole area intellectually cleaned up. The breathing levels of ozone. Well, ozone is blatantly non-toxic. Blatantly non-toxic, ozone is. You can come over to my house when I'm working. I have an ozone generator sitting there cranking out all kinds of ozone into the air because I live near a freeway and I want to have the cleanest air possible in my home. So I know if I have a high level of ozone in the house, all the hydrocarbons coming in from the freeway will probably be cleaned up pretty quickly. Other people come over to visit me, and if I've got it really turned up high, they have to go outside. 3, 4, 5 minutes, they have to go outside. What's the matter? I'm having trouble breathing. Why? Well, I think it's the ozone. Oh yeah, that's right. So what's going on is their lungs are starting to detoxify. Remember I was telling you that nature's oxygen is what cleans out our body? Well, it uses the oxygen to oxidize or burn up pollution, toxicity, and then flush it out. So if you're sitting there in my living room and you're smelling this strong concentration of ozone, not as strong as what's used in the medical areas, but stronger than normal, you'll start to detoxify right on the spot. If you're a smoker or if you eat a lot of fast food, your lungs are filthy, you've got mucus in your lungs, whatever it is, that's all coming out right now. So the smarter thing to do is if you get one of these things, you start out at a very low level and you very gradually turn it up, very, very gradually turn it up, because that's allowing your body and your family's bodies to acclimate to it, and you'll find that they have no problem at all breathing, just like I don't, with a high level of ozone in the air. I know many people that work in the industry where they use ozone in the process, the chemical processing, thousands of times what the EPA says is allowable. Perfectly healthy, they don't get sick, they don't get colds, they don't get the flu anymore, because their immune systems are online and their cells are clean. How's ozone been used commercially? Well, the London Underground, the tube over in London, in 1911, they put ozone, and in fact advertised it everywhere, that they were putting invigorating, healthy ozone into the underground air. Many European and American cities are cleaning up their water sewage and toxic dumps with ozone. Swimming pools, when the Olympians came over here from Europe and Los Angeles, they demanded that the chlorine system be ripped out of the pool and that a fresh ozone purifying system be put back into the pool water, because they said it was an unfair competitive advantage that they had to swim in this chlorine that they're not used to. Paper dye industries, wastewater, all being purified with ozone. Heavy metals, phenols, deodorization. Laundries, prison laundries, for example, use ozone instead of detergent because it's cheaper and it cleans just as well. Many contractors use ozone. Commercial cooling towers. My friend Carlos goes out in Florida and he puts ozone into the big air handling units up on the top of these skyscrapers and buildings. They no longer have to dump the millions of gallons of toxic polluted water out of these air conditioners on top of these industrial buildings anymore. All they have to do is put ozone machines on them and the water stays pure. There's no scale buildup, there's no algae buildup, and you use the same water over and over and over. And that also means, folks, that you're not dumping millions of gallons of sewage and wastewater into our aquifers, into our groundwater. It should be a national law and a state law requiring everyone to purify the air conditioner handling units up on the top of big buildings with ozone to protect our environment. And they'll save money besides, because they don't have to buy all these chemicals they normally buy. And they don't have to keep replacing the units because they get eaten up from the chemicals. Condos, homes, amusement parks, all using ozone. The tunnels under the White House have ozone purification in them. Cruise ships, all boats, a lot of them are using them, some aren't. Automobile engines, for example. There's this great thing called the OxyRev. The OxyRev is a device that you put into the intake of your automobile. And what would the ozone do when your automobile tries to burn a combination of air and fuel? With the ozone in the air, when it goes to burn that fuel, whew, it's going to make a lot of power. It's going to burn a lot cleaner, and indeed government testing in other countries has already shown that ozone added to the intakes of car engines increases horsepower, increases gas mileage, and significantly decreases tailpipe emissions. Is anyone doing that? And you guys that are gearheads, are your nitrous tanks, try slapping a couple of these units on your car. Here's some of the clients that use ozone. These are the people that, some of the names you'll recognize. San Diego Zoo, Atlantis Paradise Island in the Bahamas, Mandalay Bay Casino, Las Vegas, Underwater World in Melbourne and Beijing, Alaska Sea Life Center, Alaska Department of Fish and Game, Canadian U.S. Department of Fish and Game, Biscayne Aquaculture, Universal Studios Hollywood, Universal Studios Florida, Atlantis Paradise Island, Knott's Berry Farm, Chun-An San Rock Water Park, Four Seasons Aquatic Center, Santa Monica Family YMCA, University of San Francisco, 92nd Street YMCA, New York, Asan Sports Complex, Schaefer Rehabilitation Center, Prince George Aquatic Center, McKesson Water Products, Pacific Water Company, Children's Hospital, St. Clair Hospital, Spokane Metal, on and on and on. Well, guess what? I've been saying it for years that active oxygen subspecies are a normal part of our immune system. Well, Scripps Institute in La Jolla, California, they published a paper saying, indeed, the neutrophils and the leukocytes, when they combine, produce ozone in the human body, which is what we've been saying all along, that ozone, oxygen, peroxide, these are normal, natural things from the human body in the production of the cells in the immune system. They're in the human body, they belong there. It's how the human body protects itself. So why not just copy nature? Copy nature and increase the rate of those, because if you don't have enough oxygen in your daily life, how can your body get the oxygen to use it in the immune system? So it's up to you to add the oxygen into your life. It's up to you to put the oxygen, raw materials back in so that the DNA is programmed for you to survive, so the DNA can take that oxygen and use it to first eliminate all the toxins and then kill all the bacteria, viruses, and funguses, and pathogens. That's what it wants to do. It can't do it because there's not enough raw material oxygen for you to do it with. In New York City, the morgue, I've seen ozone air purification in the morgue, Broadway theaters, refrigerators, showers, apartment houses, condos, on all this environmental illness. You've seen pictures, I'm sure, where they tear the wall off and there's mold everywhere. Well, instead of tearing the house down or tearing the wall off, if that person simply had an ozone air purifier and put it in there, within a few weeks, maybe a month or so, all that mold would be gone and be dead, because ozone kills the mold. Again, germs, anaerobes, primitive life forms, little microscopic bugs can't live in oxygen, active forms of it. It can live in the breathing oxygen, that's why it grew there in the first place. I've had people tell me that the fleas leave their dogs, and the dogs love to sleep in front of the ozone air purifier. It's nature. All we're talking about is putting nature back into the human body. Offices, gymnasiums, schools, recreation centers, sick building syndrome, thing of the past. Formaldehyde coming out of the carpets, the glue in the laminates, all the stuff in the cooling system, the mold in the ductwork, all of it gone with ozone. So simple, so simple. Who's against air sanitizing? Who's against using ozone? Well, the guy that likes to come by and replace the ductwork every 5 years. The guy that comes by and likes to tear all that air handling stuff out and put the new one in and sell it to you over and over and over, the same thing. Those are the people that aren't telling you about it. What if there's a hurricane, a tornado, some kind of disaster? Well, a solar panel can run an ozone generator, which then can purify water. How much more simpler can it get? No trucking chemicals in on the, just have the ozone generator there, have the solar panels there. You bubble the ozone through the water. In fact, that's what medicine is all about. Your body is 100 pounds of dirty water. Well, what if you took that 100 pounds of water, just like they do at SeaWorld there, and they simply bubble ozone through it? See, because they can't use chlorine in the pools because it will kill the fish, kill the dolphins. Flipper wouldn't like that. So they bubble ozone through the water instead. And that ozone being bubbled through the water, that's what purifies it and sanitizes it. Oxygenates the water. The animals love it. They thrive in captivity because of it. Well, your body is 100 pounds of dirty water if you weigh 150 pounds. What if you bubbled ozone through it? Well, that's the essence of medicine. All the ways that we put ozone, or doctors, put ozone into the human body is with oxygen, pumped, injected, floated, soaked, dropped, infused, you name it. Just delivery systems. They're all just different. The point is they're putting the oxygen active form back into the body. And what delivery system you use is a matter of opinion. Is it safe? Well, how about this one study they did in Germany? It was published in the Forensics Acts of Germany, University of Innsbruck. 5,579,238 treatments were examined. Of those were 384,775 patients. So it's a study with 384,775 patients. This is a comprehensive study. The side effects, guess what the side effects were? Compared to all the drugs, where side effects from drugs is one of the leading causes of death in this country, which we call normal medicine, that everyone aspires to and looks up to and says, oh, you know, this is the height of medicine. In the foreign countries, they all think, oh, American medicine is the way it is, because they see all the fancy tables and the gadgets. But look at the statistics. They've gotten so far away from nature that the body's immune system no longer is functioning, and it's being overstressed and overtaxed from all these invasive procedures. Why not start in a natural place and build up slowly? The side effect rate of 384,775 patients getting 5,579,238 ozone treatments, injections, 0.000005 per application. That was the side effect rate. In other words, no side effect rate. The side effects were operator error. When someone didn't do it correctly or had it done wrong to them, that's where the problem arose. It's the safest medical, health, natural treatment in the world, is putting these active forms of oxygen into your body, because there are no side effects. It's not like drugs with this big list of side effects that come in the bottle. All your body does is flush stuff out. You may start with a little diarrhea, you may get, your nose may run. Normal cleansing reactions. Your body's got to remove the waste. This idea that we should shun things having to do with, toilet facilities, that's really backwards. Elimination is part of life. If you want to stay healthy, you got to eliminate. The number one cause of death, doctors and correctly prescribed medicines and hospitals. If you add it all together, that's what it is. Plus the adverse drug reactions. 2.2 million. Unnecessary antibiotics prescribed, 20 million. Unnecessary medical surgery procedures, 7.5 million. Unnecessary hospitalization, 8.9 million. Doctor-caused death, 783,936. Quote, the American medical system is the leading cause of death and injury in the United States. Obviously, the system trusted by so many does not work. Now, what if we go back to nature? Instead of, taking your chances like gambling in Vegas with this medical system, well, maybe it's the other 1 out of 15 people that's going to get hit, not me. What if we were to give something to you that everybody's body liked, had no side effects, and was highly effective, according to all the interviews I've done all over the world? Well, there's ozone supplements, pills, potions, powders, lotions, puts oxygen in the colon flushes out. There's home ozone equipment. Just the other day, I got into a big bag filled with ozone. It was like a Pillsbury Doughboy, like an all-over bodysuit. So I get in this sauna bag, I fill it up with ozone, I'm sitting there working on my computer, sitting in this bag. My skin was absorbing the ozone right from around it inside this bag. Beautiful, non-invasive work. It was very, very safe to do it that way. Limb baggings, diabetic ulcers, you've heard of those. Wounds that won't heal. A lot of people have wounds that won't heal. Well, they start putting bags, like a garbage bag, just a plain plastic bag, put it over the wound, let's say it's here, you tie it off, put the ozone in, blows the bag up, and just sit there and watch TV. I've seen pictures of before and after several weeks of doing that, where the diabetic ulcers just dry right up, turned into nice healthy skin again. See, your body's been trying to fix it the whole time. Your body's been trying to fix the problem. It just didn't have the raw material oxygen. That's the only problem. Rectal insufflation. Okay, you take the anal opening, put a tube up inside there, the tube bubbles ozone and oxygen mixture up into the rectum. The intestine is surrounded by millions of miles of capillaries and blood vessels. Well, where's that oxygen going to go? It's going to go through the wall of the colon into the blood vessels. This was a common way of delivering medication at the turn of the century. Nothing weird about it. Before they had direct IV needles, that's how they put drugs in the body. Ear insufflation. You take a tube with the pure medical grade ozone gas coming out of it, and you put it in your ear, not enough to cause any pressure on the eardrum, just let it flow in there, have a fan blowing at your face so that you don't breathe it because it's way too strong to breathe. And you just put it in the ear. People tell me that after a few days, after they first start doing it, they have like this fluid come out like a shellac. Well, how many ladies have been spraying hairspray on their heads for years and years and years? How much of that got in the ear? It's been stored in the cells. The body never had enough oxygen to pull it out. Now you finally give the body enough oxygen to push it out, it drips out, it runs out. People have had ear infections clear up, they've had hearing loss reversed. I've seen all kinds of things like that. You also have to have, when you're working with ozone medically, you must use an ozone-resistant material. So I don't want somebody, first thing they always say to me is, well, Jane, this ozone is great. I can make ozone in my garage. Well, yeah, you can, but the delivery system, when you're using pure medical grade oxygen from a tank, feeding into a machine that has pure ozone-resistant materials in it, is the only way to go. You must have a pathway that the ozone goes through that does not touch aluminum, which has been linked to Parkinson's, for example. It has to be stainless steel, glass, Teflon, Norprene. There's various chemicals, pipes, tubes, and materials that ozone does not react with. That's the only thing a medical grade machine can be made with, and that's why they cost so much. There's another thing called the violet ray. We'll demonstrate that for you. The violet ray is simply putting it onto your skin and makes a high tension electrical purple glow inside an evacuated glass tube. When you touch it to your skin, it creates ozone because the electrical field disassociates the oxygen on your hand, and you can smell later. You just smell your arm, you smell all the ozone there. Here's another really neat unit. I was looking at one of these this week. This is no longer in production, but it's called the Aquasizer. And the Aquasizer was made by a German fellow who's now left the country. And his molds unfortunately got destroyed when he left. But these are state-of-the-art ozone delivery systems that simply wash your body with, as you lay in it, it washes your body with hundreds of little jets filled with warm, ozone-charged water. So your pores open up, the ozone goes in through the pores, in through the skin, the body sweats out the toxins, the ozone burns up the toxins. So it's ultra-pure water, highly charged with oxygen and ozone. It's a wonderful, non-invasive way. You can go to a beauty clinic and get oxygen, ozone put through into your body this way. We've tested people who've had elevated oxygen levels in their blood for days afterwards. And then one guy, while he was being tested, decided to drink a beer. Immediately his oxygen level dropped. Let's look at what the doctors are saying about what ozone does when you apply it to the human body. Here's the generally accepted effects of traditional ozone therapy. It chelates heavy metals, works well in conjunction with EDTA, cleans arteries and veins and improves circulation, improves brain function and memory, takes the scum off the brain cells. It activates viruses, bacteria, yeast, funguses, and protozoa, normalizes hormone and enzyme production, oxidizes toxins, allowing their excretion, prevents and eliminates autoimmune diseases, prevents and treats communicable diseases, prevents and reverses degenerative diseases, prevents stroke damage, purifies the blood and lymph, reduces cardiac arrhythmia, reduces inflammation, reduces pain, calms the nerves, stimulates oxygen metabolism, stimulates the immune system, stops bleeding. Frank Schallenberger, MD in Nevada, he's on the Nevada Medical Board, he says there's 13 major effects of the ozone he has observed on humans in his clinic. Number one, ozone stimulates the production of white blood cells. That's your immune system. Number two, the interferon levels are significantly increased. Again, your immune system boosted. Number three, ozone stimulates the production of tumor necrosis factor. Again, the immune system up. Ozone stimulates the secretion of interleukin-2. That's one of the cornerstones of the immune system. Up. Ozone kills most bacteria at low concentrations. That's what I've been telling you. Ozone is effective against all types of fungi. Absolutely. Ozone fights viruses in a variety of ways. Ozone is anti-neoplastic. This means that ozone inhibits the growth of new cancer tissues. Ozone oxidizes arterial plaque. Ozone increases the flexibility and elasticity of red blood cells. Ozone accelerates the citric acid cycle, also known as the Krebs cycle or TCA cycle. Ozone makes the antioxidant enzyme system more efficient. Ozone degrades petrochemicals. It's there in the literature. Ozone concentration used mostly in medicine is 2%. Ozone, 98% oxygen. Pure medical grade oxygen. 2% equates to 27 micrograms per cubic milliliter. Some people use 42, which is about 3%. The upper limit comes out at probably about 5% of most people using it. There's some talk that above 80, it may not be good for weak, feeble, diseased, or dying cells. And so you'll see some cell damage when you go above 80 micrograms per cubic milliliter. Well, that's only the ozone taking out the dead, weak, feeble, diseased, and dying cells like it's supposed to. They're on their way out anyway. This also means, if we apply it correctly, the end of anybody contracting any disease from a transfusion. How many people get sick from transfusions? As I've said, you take ozone, you put it into stored blood, it turns the blood cardinal red and flocculates or drops out of solution all the toxins, the bacteria, the virus, and funguses, kills them all. Well, I know some people that went to the Red Cross and said, hey, we can purify all your stored blood. They said, oh, maybe so, but you're first going to have to pay us. I think they wanted $500,000 or something. They wouldn't even look at it. They wanted money. Ozonated water for washing infections, that sort of thing. Body washing, we already told you about the Aquasizer. In dentistry, it's being used. Ozone's being used in dentistry. In Russia and England, they put these cots over the tooth, put the ozone in. When they take out all the old infectious matter and stuff, it kills all the bacteria. And then you can close the tooth up and never get an infection from it. As I said, you could put it in your ear, you can put it in your vagina if you're a woman. Many women do that daily. Rectal insufflation, it's an easy way to get it. I used to be standing there with the rectal catheter and be putting ozone into my colon while I'm brushing my teeth and combing my hair in the morning because I was in a hurry. Injections, drips, minor autohemotherapy. Well, minor autohemotherapy, that's when a doctor will take out a little bit of blood, put a little bit of ozone in it, create like an immune vaccine, and then inject that back in. That has some benefit, but it's nowhere near as effective as the other things. Muscle injections. Well, people do inject in the muscles, but that's mostly painful and ineffective, according to Dr. Auberg in the 1930s. Varicose vein injections, it bleaches out the varicose veins from what the doctors tell me. Tumor injections, I've talked to clinicians and interviewed them. They injected ozone to tumors, and tumors dried up and shriveled up from the inside. Portal vein injections, there was a Dr. Turska that perfected portal vein injections, and he injected the ozone into the portal vein by opening up the anal opening, going in there with a hypodermic needle, putting the needle into the portal vein, branched out right to the liver, totally purified the liver, cleaned out the whole liver and everything that was wrong with the liver. This is a method that I came up with to take away a lot of the disadvantages of the single catheter method. This is called the two catheter method for ozone rectal insufflation. See, there's two catheters up into the anal opening, and the ozone comes in, goes up into the colon, it's absorbed into the colon, and then the waste gases and whatever else doesn't belong in there, simply drips out. The exit catheter is much larger diameter, so the waste just kind of drips out. Usually the patient is laying on a towel when this happens. But the advantage of this is, unlike the other methods, which are like 2 minutes or so with a single catheter, you hold it in there, you get a lot of cramping, that sort of thing. With this method, as long as the colon is clean beforehand, so you'll do like an enema or something, as long as the colon is clean, you can lay there for an hour. I've done it. Just laid there for an hour with ozone going into my colon, waste gases and oxidized matter coming out. There's no pressure buildup that way. The top 4 ozone clinical delivery systems, I'll explain completely thoroughly in my book. Major autohemotherapy. The Germans are experts at this. They take out maybe 500 milliliters of blood. So they have a vacutainer on a little pole with a jar full of blood sitting there, and they take the blood out and put it up there into the jar. Well, you can see it, it's brown, it's black, it's purple, it's dark, it's filthy. Then they come along and they put ozone in there. They put lots of ozone in there. It turns cardinal red. They gently swish it around, and then they drip it back into your arm. Well, it does have a lot of benefit. There's thousands of studies in the German literature showing its effectiveness, but it's inefficient because you can only get so much in, and you're taking all the garbage that was in the blood and putting it right back in the body. All right, the second way, let's call it, similar to that, used by the Russians, is ozonated saline. They simply take biological, physiological saline, they ozonate it, and they drip it into the bloodstream. Very safe. Not very effective in the present form because they only use 10 micrograms per cubic milliliter, so they're using maybe less than 1% ozone. It has benefit in the long run, but it takes far too many treatments. They should take a clue from all the American doctors doing the IV work for the past 10 years, which are using a minimum of 27 micrograms or 2% oxygen, 2% ozone, 98% oxygen, and they're simply injecting it, just injecting it right into the arm. And if it's done very, very slowly and the patient is lying down, again, it's fully described in the book, but if it's done very slowly and the patient is lying down, there's never been a problem. And the advantage of this is you can get a lot more in than you can with the autohemotherapy or the saline drip. The disadvantage of this method, besides from the fact that it's easy to do, you just fill a syringe and you inject, butterfly needle, 25G, that's really simple. It can be done anywhere in the world, very portable, no big equipment. The disadvantage of all those methods is they still leave all the garbage that's being oxidized, all the bacteria, virus, fungus, pathogens, they're being killed, they still leave them in the body for the body to have to filter, adding greater stress and toxins into the body in a different form, and they must be flushed out. So people go through a lot more heavier detoxification reactions as the oxidized particles create symptoms of different things bothering you as they come out. Much better than that. This is the best of the best. Very rare, very hard to find because it's so new, it's cutting edge. You simply take blood out of one arm, it comes out, it'll be like a dark purple, dark black. Take blood out of one arm, ozonate it, filter out all the residue, all the sediments, all the dead bugs, all the toxins, filter it out, and then take the clean, pure, sterilized, bright cardinal red blood, put it back in the other arm. And you do this continuously in a pumping circuit at the right pressures, where people know what they're doing. This is strictly a clinical practice. And I've known people that have done that for 3 hours. 3 hours, they bring a guy into a clinic. This is in another country, a doctor was telling me about it. Guy's dying of AIDS. He's passed out. He's on a stretcher. What can we do? He's just about labored breathing. He's gone. He's going to be dead in a few hours. Well, let's hook him up. Let's hook him up to the recirculatory hemoperfusion machine, RHP. Another name used to be polyatomic apheresis. I coined RHP as a more comprehensive, descriptive term for it. So they hooked him up to the machine. They let the blood circulate with the ozone, cleaning it and filtering out the garbage for 3 hours. The guy gets up off the stretcher, brushes himself off, and walks out the door. My God, it's a miracle. No, my God, the miracle is nature's oxygen. Nature's oxygen, the ozone, used correctly in medical therapy. Still not taught in American medical schools. Ozone does not cause embolisms. Some people think, oh my God, you inject ozone in the human body, you're going to... No. That comes from a misunderstanding of science. If you have nitrogen which the air is 80% of nitrogen, and you inject air into someone's body, that 80% of the air, which is nitrogen, is insoluble in blood. Nitrogen will cause nitrogen bubbles or nitrogen bubble embolisms in the human body. So if we're only using no nitrogen, pure medical grade oxygen from a tank, which the body loves, turning 2% of that into ozone, which the body loves too, and we inject that into someone, there is no embolism. Another thing you want to do is when you're detoxifying someone is you don't want to end your therapy abruptly. Let's say someone's very sick with cancer or end stage something other else, and they go into an ozone clinic somewhere and they get 2 weeks of therapy and then they stop. Well, that's not smart, because what they're doing is they've spent 2 weeks detoxifying or dragging up everything that's stored in the blood. See, if your body doesn't know what to do with something, it simply stuffs it somewhere and covers it with mucus. Okay? Then you put the oxygen, the ozone in, and the oxygen ozone rips off or oxidizes the mucopolysaccharides. The mucus takes it out, uncorks, uncaps the covered up whatever it is, that comes out, it kills that, and then all this garbage is floating in your system. Well, if just like that you stop your therapy, you don't come back every day, all that's just going to settle someplace new, cause all kinds of problems. So you must gradually, slowly come off one of these heavy-duty therapies in a clinical setting by coming down very, very slowly, less and less and less. Gives the body time to reorganize the waste matter, put it in the proper places. There are more than 3,000 medical references in the German, Russian, Italian, and Cuban literature, probably more like 10 or 12,000 if we start reading some of these foreign languages, especially German, showing ozone's use throughout 50 years of application to humans by way of millions of dosages. The International Ozone Association and the ozone machine manufacturers report more than 7,000 MDs in Europe using medical ozone safely and effectively, and some have been doing this for more than 40 years. And yet you have somebody, an assistant from the FDA, stand up in front of a senatorial committee here in the United States, hold up an ozone machine and say, "This is quackery. Ozone is a toxic gas with no medical applications." And then that phrase is put into the Federal Register to become administrative law. Ozone is a toxic gas with no medical applications. And on the day they said that, there were thousands of physicians giving millions of dosages around the world of these therapies. They're not all quacks and charlatans. They do it because it's simple, it's cheap, and it works. But it's not drugs. Who do you think was paying him to stand up in front of our congressman and lie about ozone? I've interviewed many people with cancer sent home to die who then used proper ozone therapies and ended up still perfectly healthy 5 years later. I've had them stand up in my workshops and lectures. They'll stand up and go, "Mr. McCabe, yes, I want everybody in here to listen to what he has to say. I came here with 2 weeks to live last year." 2 weeks to live last year, it's a year later, and he's standing up telling everyone to listen to what I had to say. I've seen this over and over. But these people stuck to a full protocol. They got daily supplementation, injections, whatever, of the ozone, oxygen, active oxygen. They got it in the right dosages and the right concentrations, very important, and combined it with other significant oxygen and other different modalities that were necessary. They applied it once or twice a day, every single day, for at least 6 weeks. Those are the best success stories I've seen. Some people have tried to get this into the American medical mainstream, the ozone therapy. In St. Clair, Mr. Page, Hoops, Bradford, and Associates started a research company to get direct IV ozone through the FDA process. Money was raised. 7 animal studies were completed at the University of Virginia and Cornell, but in 1992 they filed for an investigative new drug status and then let it go because they got to fighting amongst themselves, human ego, our old nemesis, and they broke up. So that's as far as they got. FDA, under the work of James A. Kaplan in Philadelphia, his company CapMed received orphan drug designation from the US FDA for research into the use of ozone oxygen for the treatment of sickle cell anemia. How many people in this audience are afraid that genetically they're part of the subset that's vulnerable to sickle cell anemia? Well, guess what? It's commonly used in Cuba, and there's many research papers written up about it. It's used in stopping the sickling effect in sickle cell anemia and restoring full oxygenation. And so that means all the horrible things that happen to people with sickle cell don't have to happen. This man, Mr. Kaplan, approached all the major sickle cell organizations in the United States, and guess what they said? Well, if it was any good, we'd be using it already, right? Here's 7 good ozone clinical references, just quickly. Medline, for example. Here's an older version. It's only got 283 medical ozone therapies, scientific references, and this is on the PubMed or Medline US government site. About 30 of these are double-blind clinical studies, which everyone always says, well, if you show me a double-blind study, I'll listen to you. Well, there's 30 of them on the government site showing that ozone therapy has been used around the world very successfully.
They're just as big and just as important as your blood system, but you don't hear much about the lymph vessels and the lymph fluid. This is probably because the lymph vessels are clear and collapse easily, so they don't attract as much notice. Some say that information about this other half of the circulation story has been suppressed, since understanding it makes healing way too easy. Your blood system is only half the story of your circulation. Your heart brings the blood through a system of vessels and then out into tiny capillaries in order to carry food, minerals, and oxygen out to all the cells. The blood cells stay in the capillaries and discharge their nutrients into the lymph. Where the blood system ends, the lymph system begins. The lymph system is a pool of fluid surrounding the blood capillaries all over the body. It picks up the minerals, fats, vitamins, sugars, and oxygen from the blood and then brings them to the cells. Everything in the body is floating in this fluid that floats nourishment and oxygen out to the cells, and then continuing to flow, it carries away our waste. You must keep the river of lymph clean in order to get the oxygen in and to get the trash out.
In 1980, Washington University School of Medicine, St. Louis, published in Science, a U.S. peer-reviewed scientific journal, ozone selectively inhibits human cancer cell growth. Now, why would ozone stop cancer? And if you look at the other clinical references about ozone's use in cancer, they always usually say in a dose-dependent manner. In other words, the more you give them, the more ozone and oxygen you give them, the quicker the cancer cells die or are prevented from growing. Because cancer is a fermentative disease. Cancer is when a normal cell is denied its oxygen requirements. The enzyme system, the mitochondria area of the cell, is so damaged that that cell can no longer use oxygen because of the lack of oxygen, in a sense, burns it from a lack of oxygen. Can't use oxygen anymore. But to survive, remember your body's programmed to survive, your body will then ferment glucose. That cell will then start to get its energy, ATP, from the glucose in the body, your body's sugar. So if you were to put enough oxygen back in, would you have a problem where a cell doesn't have enough oxygen, gets burnt and can't use oxygen anymore, and then starts fermenting sugar, which makes it create lactic acid, and the lactic acid goes out and burns the cells next to us? This is how cancer spreads. The cells next to the cancer cell become cancerous because of the lack of oxygen and the increased acid. And if you were to clean that out, if you were to flood your body with oxygen, what would happen to those cancer cells? All of the cancer cells, again, Washington University School of Medicine, St. Louis, all of the cancer cells showed marked dose-dependent growth inhibition in ozone at 0.3 and 0.5 parts per million, while the normal cells were not effective. That's one of the problems in our country is we use too little all the time in these tests. Too little, too little, too little. But even then, using too little, they got great results. Ozone inhibits cancer 40 to 60% and up to 90%. 1983, doctors from all over the world using ozone came together in Washington, D.C. and announced to the world that ozone removes viruses and bacteria from blood, human and stored. It's successfully used on AIDS, herpes, hepatitis, mononucleosis, cirrhosis of the liver, gangrene, cardiovascular disease, arteriosclerosis, high cholesterol, cancerous tumors, lymphomas, leukemia. Highly effective on rheumatoid and other arthritis, allergies of all types, improves multiple sclerosis, ameliorates Alzheimer's disease, senility, and Parkinson's. Effective on proctitis, colitis, prostate, candidiasis, trichomoniasis, cystitis, and externally, ozone is effective in treating acne, burns, leg ulcers, open sores and wounds, eczema, and fungus. Have I missed your disease? These are doctors 10, 20, 30 years in their clinics, commonly successfully treating these diseases with ozone, telling the world in 1983, did anybody do anything about it? No. Why? Because there's no big corporation money behind it, telling you every night in the news programs, paying the news department to not do the stories on these natural healing methods. So you never hear about it. 1988, ozone may limit AIDS symptoms. Well, I wonder why. Could it be that the AIDS virus is anaerobic? Can't live in oxygen because it's an anaerobe? It's a primitive germ anaerobe? Surrounded with oxygen, what's going to happen to it? Well, indeed, Bethesda Naval Hospital, Dr. Kenneth Wagner reported, ozone stopped the HIV virus from multiplying and left cells undamaged. Normal, healthy human cells love oxygen, but the viruses, the anaerobes, they can't stand it. Journal of the American Society of Hematology, 1991, State University of New York, Syracuse Research, Dr. Bernard Poise. The ozone completely removed the HIV virus from the blood 97 to 100% of the time, yet was non-toxic to normal, healthy blood components. I published that in my first book in 1988. In 1988, there was a peer-reviewed journal in this country reporting that ozone completely removed the HIV virus from the blood 97 to 100% of the time. Now, it doesn't matter if HIV causes AIDS or not. There's controversy over that. The point is, if anything can get the blood so clean that it removes the viruses and bacteria 97 to 100% of the time, I would think it would clean out everything. And no matter what is wrong with the human body, it's manifesting as a disease, it would probably be cleaned out, wouldn't it? And so these therapies are useful because you can use the standard diagnostic procedures, but you have to understand that they may not be telling you exactly the right thing, but what they're telling you is significant because it shows the body's cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. 1993, the International Ozone Association, 11th Ozone World Congress. Hundreds of Russians at that meeting announced that during the past 15 years, they've treated thousands of people with ozone. It's just absolutely incredible what they're doing in Russia. This is a picture of a medical ozone hospital in Russia. The Russians have more medical savvy than the US. We have an oxygen gap. Remember the old missile gap? Well, we have an oxygen gap with the Russians. There's 1,300 medical ozone machines that have been produced in Russia. There's 1,950 ozone MDs, 1,300 ozone nurses, 1,100 medical organizations using ozone. 660 of them are the large state, regional, or city hospitals that have departments for ozone therapy. 440 of them are private clinics or surgeries or medical centers that specialize only in ozone therapy or provide ozone treatments. 40 are state medical institutes, the Russian government state medical hospital system. Universities and academies teach ozone therapy to doctors. We don't teach ozone therapy to our doctors because the curriculum is controlled by the salespeople for the drug companies. 200 ozone doctoral dissertations were given back when I put this slide together. Here's from the 1961 Encyclopedia of Chemical Technology, Volume 16, 3rd edition, John Wiley & Sons. During the 80-year history of the large-scale usage of ozone, there's never been a human death attributed to it. Never been a human death in 80 years. Ozone has benefit in cancer. This is a paper at the Second International Conference on Anti-Carcinogenesis and Radiation Protection at Gaithersburg, Maryland. The selectively inhibitive effect of medical ozone prepared from pure oxygen on tumorous human cell cultures has been known for a long time, and it has recently been confirmed once more. Dr. Gerard Sunin publishes Ozone in Medicine, Overview and Future Directions in the Journal of Advancement in Medicine. Dr. Sunin at the Bellevue Medical Center, New York City, lists medical ozone as commonly used worldwide on herpes, AIDS, and flu. Also used on wounds, burns, staph infections, fungal and radiation injuries, and gangrene, as well as on colitis, fistula, hemorrhoids, and anal infections. In Russia, you get shot with a bullet, all right? You got a hole in you, you're bleeding. They throw you on the table. What's the first thing they do? They take a tube filled with ozone, jam it into the bullet hole. That's ER gurney therapy right there in Russia. Common practice. Why? Because the ozone oxygen completely sterilizes everything in there, and it cauterizes the wound. and then they take the bullet out. Dr. Kenneth Wagner, Senior Research Physician for HIV Research at Henry M. Jackson Foundation for the Advancement of Military Medicine, Rockville, Maryland, 1988. European physicians have used ozone to safely treat viruses for years. Dr. Michael T. Carpendale at the UC Medical School in San Francisco, Bay Medical Research Foundation, San Francisco, published the Journal of Antiviral Research, Ozone Inactivates HIV at Non-Cytotoxic Concentrations. 1993, January. Hemobiology, transfusion, viral inactivation and reduction in cellular blood products. Among the chemicals investigated to inactivate or help displace virus are ozone. It just goes on. I mean, I could sit here and read thousands and thousands of medical studies all over the world. Now, people and doctors that are new to ozone need to understand concentration is very important. As I said, 27 micrograms up to 80, that's the window everybody uses in the injection work and the bagging and that sort of thing. They use the upper limits. Your body is 2/3 water. You got to understand, you're purifying water. That's what it's all about, is you're purifying the cellular tissue, the blood, the lymph, everything else, the bone marrow. Bones aren't solid, they're flexible. Bones are living cells. Moving the lymph is very important. When we start talking about ozone, we're also talking about getting the circulation going, and ozone increases the metabolic rate, which moves the lymph, and the lymph is it's the sewer of the body. It carries the garbage away from the cells. The blood carries the oxygen and food in, the lymph carries everything